Imagine getting the call, fear raid, soon, get the Firo. We did that, uh, actually quite a lot, and it was always very chaotic, running for the specters, everybody in fizzing, getting ready, running in, and what came next could be pure chaos. Quite unlike killing this Aviak guard. Killing birds in Lake Rathe, nice and calm. Fear was literally chaos. So you would get the call, you would go to the Firo, and you would go through the specters. Um, and I'll never forget the specters. During the first couple of those first times I did that, I had turned 46. That was the level you needed to be, and instantly went looking for raids. Um, I ended up doing Fear about 30 times, a little bit more than that. My roommate at the time was a Necro, and Fear had Necro gear. But I'll never forget being an Enchanter was just insanity at those times, because you were so needed. I kid you not, there were times where I logged in and I didn't even have to figure out what I was doing, um, because I could choose, because enchanters were needed that much. So you run through the portal, you come out on the other side, you instantly went over to the side, the hill, and you didn't really wait for the barrage because it was there instantly. Whether it was a spider or a shiverback or a scareling, an imp, you got greeted in Fear every time you went in there. And it really depended how you reacted to it. And then if you would get too many, and then it would turn out that it was a full wipe. So full wipe could take an hour to catch back up because you had to get back to the Firo, back through the specters, and then go back into the zone without any of your gear. At this time, you had to recover your gear. You didn't. You could have something in the bank, but what were you going to do with it once you got back in? So, and you did have bags. You could do that. Some people had backup equipment. I was. I didn't. I mean, I ended up having some backup equipment, but I didn't from the beginning, and that was so stressful, so fun, which is kind of two terms that you don't put together, stressful fun. And it was some of the most fun that I ever had. Those early raids in EverQuest were insane. Think about it. Nowadays we have, what's over there and why did that change? Maybe because it's getting darker. But we didn't have voice chat. We had a raid leader yelling at us in all caps. And that's what they did to get us to do what they wanted and how they wanted. We had a shaman on Tenari that did these raids, and they were open raids. They were not guild raids. Um, there were some guilds, but I don't think being in a guild was as prominent right at the beginning. But we would go in, we would get the shiverbacks, we would get the spiders, we would get the imps, and you know, I don't ever recall it taking more than twice to break into fear. But once you broke into fear, then you were hanging out on the wall, then things started to relax. Um, but that first time going in, knowing what you had to do, but also knowing that you could lose, it was just crazy. I don't know how else to explain it. Oh, unlike sitting here pulling these birds. But yeah, I don't think I would change any of that. I mean, nowadays, yeah, everything's much easier with having the voice chat. But man, the tense times and nature of having to do all that without real conversation is pretty awesome. I do like the amount of money that I get here. But and you know, I did it, and I can't even recall what I was looking for, but I got something like deep into the amount of times I'd been there. And I'm pretty sure it was a Enchanter item, but I cannot recall for the life of me. You know, and hey, I went there because they had Enchanter gear. But I liked helping raids. I liked having fun. And in the old days, raids were just different. We would then move down into the right a little bit, and that's where we would pull. And I have to look on the internet because I always forget. It was Dread, Fright. We would always pull Dread and Fright from the right of where the what everybody calls West Wall Camp, I guess. And then we would pull that whole area. Then we would move back around to where we came in, and we would take on the cubes, the gelatinous cubes, and we would work our way then to Cazic-Thule. So oddly enough, with Cazic-Thule, you could be in the middle of your raid, and this was not a short term thing. These raids would take hours, um, and you could tick Cazic-Thule off so badly that he would summon you. He would first yell your name, and you knew what was coming because he would summon you in Death Touch. And uh, I always thought it was funny. I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know why. But I always thought it was funny whenever I would get summoned. And I always felt like I was doing my job properly whenever I would get summoned. So we have this large group of people. We're bouncing from the west wall camp whenever you first get in there, over to right to where we can pull most of the mobs in the middle, and then we run back over, take on the cubes, and then whenever you're in the cubes, start to think about, you know, how we're gonna do what we're gonna do next, and that is to actually take on Cazic-Thule, um, which could be a very long fight just on itself. Um, and that's why you had to clear all of fear. Hey, that rhymed. You had to clear all of fear before you could go to Cazic-Thule because you could aggro everything. And there was another golem that you had to take on, and that name was Terror, right? Yes, Terror, another golem. And these were big, tough boys. I mean, real big. And those fights alone would take their time. You would have to make sure everybody was met up. Um, and these fights just weren't easy. I don't know that we can go back, or if we ever will go back to those kind of days. In MMOs, I'm thinking that if they do, it would be in some of the newer indie type games because once WoW came along, and I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, it just is what it is. Um, a lot of things changed, and you no longer had like a major grind. Uh, you got your rewards a little quicker. I don't know if WoW came out. What level are you? 19. If WoW came out, that with the same rules of like what EverQuest had, where things were more of a grind, where things were a little tougher, I don't know that WoW would have really made a big dent versus EverQuest. Um, but I think that's why WoW ended up doing well, was because it was different and it gave you different opportunities. And there's nothing wrong with that. I don't mean that badly. It's just different. And everybody plays games for whatever reason they play games. I was lucky enough that while this was going on, I was a student in college. I went to the University of Dubuque. And if you know Dubuque, then you know there's just not a lot going on, especially around 2000. Um, we had some stuff going on, but it was a nice small town, and I went to school. That was my thing. I went to school. I worked some, but when I wasn't doing schoolwork or working, then I was playing EverQuest, and I played EverQuest a lot. me and my roommate played EverQuest a lot. In fact, we got made fun of quite a bit with our classmates. We did have one join us, and we did have the one buddy who actually got us into the game. He would join us, so sometimes we had full four man group, and it was me and Enchanter, my roommate and Necro, the guy who started us all into it was a Necro, and then the other classmate was a mage, and he actually came over and brought his computer, so three of us was in one room, which, talk about being able to talk, made it much easier, because back in the day you were typing everything. And again, it doesn't bother me that's what it was. It's just that was the only thing we had, so that's what we dealt with. So we go through, we fight, we kill, we get to Cazic-Thule, have an hour long session, or however long it took, I can't recall exactly. Um, and then we would fight and argue over who gets what. Not really fighting and arguing, but if you wanted something, then you had to present your case. And most of the time it was give me a tell by the leader of the raid. And I always thought that the leader was very fair, and I ran with the same person in fear all the time. So almost all of my fear raids was with the same leader, and same for my roomie, and that's why he ended up in a full set of the necro items from fear. So I think that's going to do it. I will never forget running into fear with no gear, hoping that we had cleared enough that we could make the leftover shiverbacks, make the leftover spiders, make the leftover imps, stand there and wait till we got our gear back and got met up, and slowly we would res people until we had gotten everybody taken care of. And usually by about the time we got everybody taken care of was whenever we moved. So I think that's going to do it. I think I have hit all the major points. I really look back fondly on those early days. I mean, people would tell me, they went into Fear and Hate with bronze. And I wasn't that person. I was after that. But I was still early enough to have the fun and craziness of breaking into fear, not knowing for sure you were going to make it to the first camp and make it alive without dying and having to go through that process. So that's my fear story. I hope you enjoy that. Have a great rest of your day. Please do me a favor. I have had some good growth recently, and I'd like to continue that. So please like, please subscribe, leave me a comment. Comment about what your fear memory is. Again, I thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day.